even if you can't see Sebastian Thies, because he is ill at home and without internet connection. I've just talked to him and he is with us in mind, and he also warmly welcomes you. So does Russell West-Pavlov, and I think, yeah, Yvonne Sanchez is there from UNAM, of course. I can't see her because I haven't really noticed her because the camera isn't on. But these are people from who have contributed a lot in the last years to keep this network going. And we are very, very happy that this year's forum has been organized by, let's say, the next generation of researchers who have who have done their work on their thesis in the framework of our network and have now taken over the responsibility to organize this year's edition. So it is first of all Sara, Vakili, Lieli, Loures, and Beatriz Medeiros. We would like to thank, because it is them who came to us at a certain moment in the beginning of the year or so, because they wanted to organize an event on what has now become decolonial perspectives on gender, sexuality, and patriarchy. And we thought it would be a perfect idea to have this subject on our networks forum. And so they accepted to not only organize a small event, but this 10 days forum with a large international distribution. And they contacted other people, and an international organizing committee was set up, which then included members from UNAM, next to Yvonne Sanchez, also Gabriela Ortuño, from UCAD, from UP, from University of Tübingen, and they finally managed to reach out to researchers in Latin America, in Africa, and in Europe. And by the way, going far beyond our partner universities, to bring together a program with panels in English, Spanish, and French. And they have dedicated a special interest not only to interventions from academia, but also from art and activism. I would especially mention at this moment the artist, our Mendes, who has created the poster for this forum, which you have all seen on the website and on the program we sent around. And unfortunately, at the beginning, her name was there, and during all this technical management, etc., it has got lost somewhere. So really, I would like to thank again our Mendes, and we're just working on putting her name back to her work. This is not an enterprise of colonialism or patriarchy to keep women's names and voices off. It rather happened by the mostly female team. Yeah, and we are very, very sorry for this, and we'll correct it as soon as possible. So I would, yeah, I've already said some of the things I've noted for later on. So next to the people already mentioned, it was Gabriela González Ortuño and Iván Sánchez Becerril from UNAM who organized the Spanish speaking panels. I would also like Karina Stickel, who joined the team at the latest moment to organize the Francophone panels. I would also like to thank all those who have accepted to moderate panels, as well, of course, those who have submitted suggestions for very exciting panels. I think there's a wide range, and I won't talk on it because this will be the job of Sara Vakili, I think. But I'm very much looking forward to the talk in the panels, the discussions which will go on. And last but not least, I would also like to thank those who are doing the technical support. I have to mention Raghav Verma, who helped a lot in the beginning of the the forum's organization, and at the end, in the last days. But I would also like to thank all the student volunteers from the different partner universities who are there and who will do everything to make these panels technically, to support us technically. So thank you very much to all of them. And now I'll hand over to Sara Vakili, who joined the team as a member of University of Tübingen. But we can now congratulate her because she has gained a position at Westchester University of Pennsylvania and is propagating our Global South studies in the US. So thank you for being there. Thank you for all of them. And I'll hand over.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. So I know most of you. I prepared a very short presentation, and then I think like just at the end of my presentation, I will say all of the thank you again that Susanne said. So, but since I prepared, I will go over them again. So maybe I start like just screen sharing because I have a video to show. And tell me if you have problems listening the video.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling and bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, wow. There I go.
You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But just like life, I rise. These lines of the poem by Maya Angelou resonate perfectly with the ongoing movement in Iran. The protests were triggered due to the death of a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman, Mahsa Amini, by morality police for having inappropriate hijab. Since that day, women and men are fighting side by side for freedom on the streets in different cities. As much hijab, or covering one's body, here is the women, is the Islamic Sharia or law. It has become a political tool by which the Islamic government consolidates its power practice. The interconnection of the stability of Ayatollah's regime and subjugating female bodies is so crucial that any attempt against hijab is an attempt to overthrow the regime and can be punished by death. This movement, however, is not new. From the very first day that the Islamic Revolution took over the power, Iranian women have protested the regime against compulsory hijab, and in the last 40 years, they have expressed their dissatisfaction in different forms. Whether it is protesting on the street or resisting moral codes with their lipstick or makeups, or like today, burning their headscarves in street bonfire, women of Iran have been continuously reclaiming their agency and disrupting state oppression. Through these protests and by removing their hijab, the women illustrate the body in its vulnerability as powerful because it can be a form of resistance against those assumed to possess power. The body involved in the social action does not only disrupt the states of oppression, but it also mobilizes and distorts the traditional notion of the relation between knowledge and body. We know the past neglect of the body in social theory was a product of Western mind-body dualism that divided human experience into bodily and cognitive realisms. The knowledge-body distinction identifies knowledge, culture, and reason with masculinity and identifies body, nature, and emotion with femininity. Viewing human reasons as the principal source of progress and emancipation, it perceives that rational as separate from and exalted over the corporeal. In other words, consciousness was grasped as separate from and preceding the body. Following feminist thinking, the body should not be viewed as a biological given, but as constituted in the intersection of discourse, social institutions, and the corporeality of body. As Orina Sasson-Levy states, quote, feminist scholarship on gender and the body teaches us that women's bodies are appropriated more often and completely than those of men because women's bodies are constituted within discourse, rules, norms, and institutions formulated and dominated by men. At the same time, the female body, like male body, has an inherent potential to resist domination and power relation, end quote. What is going on in Iran today is very relevant to this conference or international forum not only because it started by women, but because it has a world historical importance. According to Slavoj Žižek, the movement in Iran today, quote, combines different struggles against women's oppression, against religious fundamentalism, for political freedom against state terror into an organic unity, end quote. This movement does not emerge as a feminist group, and probably most of women on the street do not refer themselves as feminists in its Western tradition or Western definition. The movement does not hold essentialist perspective, nor does it rationalize and articulate its exclusion of men. As Žižek stated last week on his Instagram post, quote, so Zan Zendegi Azadi, woman life freedom, is very different from Me Too in Western countries. The movement in Iran not only mobilizes millions of ordinary women, but also it directly and immediately includes men. So there is no anti-masculine tendency in it, as it is often the case with the Western feminism. Women and men are together in it. The enemy is the religious fundamentalism supported by a state terror, end quote. That shows Iranian men realize that they cannot be really free if the women of Iran are not free. And Iranians cannot be free if Kurds, Baloch, Jewish, Christian, Zoroastrians, Baha'is, transgenders, homosexuals, disabled bodies, and other minority groups are oppressed. So any attack against women is an attack against Kurds, Jewish, Baloch, etc. As Audley Lorde points out, quote, any attack against Black people is a lesbian and gay issue because I and thousands of Black women are part of the lesbian community. Any attack against lesbian and gays is a Black issue because thousands of lesbian and gay men are Black. There is no hierarchy of oppression, end quote. So this introduction is not only about the oppression against Iranian women, it is also about oppression and discrimination against women in Mexico, in Brazil, in India, and in countries in Africa. It is also about oppression and discrimination against women in the global north, whether it is naked protests by women in Africa to shame and punish male adversaries, or Mexican women who protest femicide, or Brazilian women action who wants to derail the presidential bid of Bolsonaro, or a slut walk which calls for an end to the rape culture, the feminine bodies become an agent of social and political change, a political project. For the political potential that feminine bodies have, aligned with the contemporary women of color and third world women's critique of gender and feminist universalism, this forum centers the claim that the intersection of race, classes, sexuality, and gender exceeds the categories of colonial modernity. It is also designed to bring together artists, activists, and scholars from across the world to address the body as an arena of resistance through everyday life practices and in social media, such as hairstyle, body modification, veil wearing, body weight, cosmetic surgery, or music and dance performances. So in the coming days, our panelists and participants bring our attention to how bodily sites are treated as protesting against normative codes of femininity, as a means of self-empowerment, and or as constructing counter-hegemonic identity. They focus on the importance of social input from different groups and how these ideas from across the region and location can speak to each other. As Leila González states, we are tired of knowing that there is no mention of an important social input from popular classes, women, indigenous and Black people in our historical and cultural formation, in education, nor the books we study from. So it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to this international forum. Thank you for joining us today and those who are joining us in the next days. Although the very first idea of this forum was initiated by Lieli, Beatriz and I in Breslau, where my heart belongs, this international forum would have not come to fruition without the support of an immense group of people. So allow me to thank you, ICGSS, at the University of Tübingen, for giving us the platform. A special thank to Susanne Gomigu, Sebastian Thies, and Russell West Pavlov. I would also to thank colleagues Karina Stickel, Ivan Sanchez, and Gabriela González, and Raghav Verma for their continued engagement and discussions over the past months until today. Without you, this event was impossible. I would like to thank you, Awa Mendes, for her beautiful artwork we are using for the poster. She's actually produced this art for our international forum. A special thank to our other colleagues behind the scenes, namely technical support. Even without you, this event was impossible. Thank you to all participants and moderators who made time to be present for the next few days. Now I would like to acknowledge and thank our partners, Center for Gender and Diversity Research, SETCADE, and a special thank to Gero Bauer for helping us spreading the words, Colegio de Estudios Latinoamericanos, CELA, la Universidad Autónoma de México, UNAM, School of Arts, University of Pretoria, University of Federal Fluminense, UFE, Travessia, Cheikh, Anta, Diop, Dakar, University of UCAD. Thank you all again. It's a great pleasure to have you. That was it. Thank you. I think we are going to have a 15 minutes virtual break, and then we will come back and we will listen to our keynote speaker, Beatriz Polivanov.
Maybe we should wait for Lieli. Is she here? Or we could
yes,
just...
I am. I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Just answering some emails.
Yes. No, then I will be starting. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I will be introducing Professor Beatriz Polivanov. She's a tenure-track professor at the Department of Media and Cultural Studies at Universidade Federal Fluminense, and she's also a faculty at the graduate program in communication at the same institution. Between the years 2019 and 2020, she was a visiting scholar at McGill University, Canada, in the Department of Art, History, and Communication Studies, where she further developed her research, electronic music scenes and female invisibility, negotiations and disputes in digital culture. Professor Polivanov holds a doctoral and master's degree in communication studies from Universidade Federal Fluminense and a BA in arts from Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro. She leads the research group in MediaCon, Digital Media, Identity and Communication, and she is also a member of the Global South Network and is part of the faculty in the project Discomforting Territories, Images, Narratives, and Objects of the Global South. Today, Beatriz Polivanov as our keynote speaker, will present her paper, Perfect Bodies and Digital Influencers, Gender Ruptures of Performance, a collaboration with Professor Fernanda Carreira that unfortunately couldn't be with us today due to a schedule conflict. In their work, the professors explored the idea of rupture of performance, looking at two cases of female Brazilian influencers that had their authenticity questioned on social media. So I thank you so much, Bia, for accepting our invitation. It is a pleasure to hear from you and to be with you today.
Thank you, Bia. I'm the one to thank you very much. I'm going to go through all the thank yous that I want to share with you, but it's a great pleasure for me for being here, and I welcome everybody who's just joining us right now. If you don't mind, I would like to share my screen because I think it's going to be easier for me to present using images so that everybody can see what I want to talk about. And so this is my screen and I hope you can see it. Is it okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, Via. I really want to thank you for not only you, of course, but Lieli, Loures, and Sara, Vakili for organizing this event. It's a beautiful, beautiful program. I'm really thrilled to be part of this. And I also was I was touched by Sarah's presentation. So thank you, Sarah, for your very, very powerful presentation in the beginning. I really want to thank Professor Suzanne Gumegu for also inviting me for this keynote speech, and also all the colleagues from the ICGSS who are part of this research network, this international research network that has been so important for us, for me at least since 2015. Sorry, 2015. That's it. It's been quite some. Yeah, it's been a few years right now. And I wanted to thank also Karina and Kiki for their technical support. And of course, Professor Fernando Rezende, who first invited me to be a part of the project some years ago. So really, thank you very much and congratulations for putting this forum together. And also, I want to say that this image is beautiful. So I congratulate Awa Mendes for this beautiful image that she created. So thank you very much. Before I go to my presentation itself, I would like to just say a few words about what's going on in Brazil right now. So last Sunday, 2 days ago, we had the first round of Brazilian election for presidential, not only for the presidential post, but also for other important figures in our politician scenario. And we are still trying to process what it means to see that 48% of people in Brazil voted for Lula, who was our former president, and 43% of people voted for Jair Bolsonaro, who is our current president, and who is a person who said, and I quote, he said that to a woman, she does not deserve to be raped because she's very bad, she's very ugly. So she does not deserve to be raped. He said that in a public environment. And this is just one of the things that he has been saying to us for the past years. And this is a context in Brazil where we have, as this image on the left shows, we have about 13 women killed per day in our country. And we have about 180 rapes per day in Brazil. So this is quite a difficult scenario for us now. So we are facing millions of Brazilian people who are voting for this president, for Jair Bolsonaro, to stay in power and to repeat these kinds of behavior, and not only behavior, but he's affecting our lives directly. And this is it's a very sad moment for us. At the same time, of course, we have hope. So Lula is winning so far, and we do have hope that we're going to see brighter days in Brazil. But this shows a lot about what is the country now with this kind of politician in power. So a woman does not deserve to be raped here because she's ugly. She's not beautiful enough to be raped. This is something that we hear from our president. And of course, this is only just one of the problems that we have nowadays. So just to focus on the presentation that I prepared for you today, this is based on this article called Perfect Bodies and Digital Influencers, Gender Ruptures of Performance on Social Media in Brazil, that was published with my dear colleague, Fernanda Carreira, this year, 2022, in Cultural Politics, the special issue on joyful subjects that was edited by our also very dear colleague, Mahita Ikani. So this talk is going to be based on the ideas that we present in this paper. I really wanted Fernanda to be here. It's a shame that she couldn't be here with us today, but I wanted to show you who Fernanda is a little bit. So this is Fernanda. She's a tenure track professor at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and she's also a colleague of us at UFI, and she's the leader of the research group Digital Identities and Diversity Lab, and I'm a huge fan. So I really miss her for not being here with me today. Just to go back to some main ideas that came up before the paper was written. So one thing that I had noticed before talking about this in the paper was that studies that talk about self-presentation, how we perform our identities in everyday lives, for example, Goffman's work, Cheshner's works, among many others scholars, these studies, I argue that they pay little attention to dynamics of self-presentation that do not occur as we expected. And this is something that I have been calling ruptures of performance. So when we try to perform our identity in a way, but somehow for some reason or for some reasons, it does not happen as we expected. So one of the things that I argue when of course, I pay tribute to their work, but at the same time, I see that they have not paid too much attention to things that do not occur as we expect. And another thing is they focus on face-to-face environments. Of course, Goffman was writing in an age we didn't have social media, of course, but what the difference that we have when we go online, when we go to social media, what happens when we go to these platforms in terms of how we present ourselves, our bodies, mediated through many different algorithms, many different platforms. So I argue that there are cultural and material differences when we go online and we would project our bodies in these spaces. And this is something that these studies, they do not cover. And a third aspect, I would say, is that they reinforce an idea of a certain universality by not taking into account matters of gender, race, and class, among many others. So these men are men, they are white, they are from the global north. So Goffman was Canadian, Cheshner was from the United States, from the United States. And they talk about these processes of self-presentation and how we build our identities in social life, in our daily lives, but they do not take account into matters of gender, of race and class, as if everybody processed these dynamics in the same way. And I think that could be a problem. So then what we are going to try to present here is a little bit of the context that gave us the idea for the paper. So we first go back to how Brazilian women are often associated with beauty. And this is not only me saying, of course, we have literature that shows that. And we are very often associated to our appearance and our sensuality. So this is, for example, a postcard of Copacabana Beach. And this is still nowadays, it's not very old, it's not very rare to find those things, for example, on the streets. So they are selling the beach together with our body of female bodies, and we cannot even see the faces of these women. So this idea is very often associated with Brazilian women. And Brazil has a very violent history of colonization and enslavement of Black and indigenous peoples. So femininity here in Brazil was constructed in a very complex imbrication of values that affect and oppress women very differently, even nowadays. So we have many different ideals of what being a woman is in Brazil, and it's completely different, for example, for Black, Indigenous, and white women. So we go from ideals of purity to desire. We go from ideas of being somebody who could be an object of extreme fascination and desire. At the same time, we should be afraid of this body, especially if you're talking about Black women's bodies. And even though we have these huge differences, in all of them, we are subject to the male gaze and the male control. So this is very much part of our society until nowadays. And what happens when we go to online media? So when we go to these social media, of course, we see this quest for the so-called perfect body, especially for women. This is very particular in our society. And when we go to online media, when we go to social media, we see lots and lots of profiles of people trying, especially women, trying to sell this idea of this so-called perfect body, which is skin, white, very much with muscles, so very much tonified in a way. And this gains another layer of visibility when we go to social media, as Fernanda Carreira states. But what is interesting is that nowadays, we don't see only these kinds of profiles. We also see lots of female influencers that are going against these standards of beauty that are taken as oppressive. And here in the article, we focus on big bodies. So the idea of fat positivity. So embracing the fat body as a body that is okay, that is perfect in the way it is. It doesn't need to be thin or to have any kind of modification. So this is something that we see. We see both kinds of profiles in Brazilian online context nowadays. Still, of course, the so-called perfect body, the thin body, is it has more entries. We have more profiles selling this kind of body. But the female influencers that go against this, they are also taking power in Brazil, and they are also presenting themselves very often nowadays. What we see is that even though we have a very interesting movement of body acceptance in Brazil in these cases, we can argue that both forms, either the fit or the fat body, both forms are appropriated by consumer culture. It's interesting for consumer culture to have more bodies to be sold. So they are both immersed in this kind of culture. And they are both related to trying to find joy, to trying to fit this imperative of happiness, as João Freire Filho says. And they claim for authenticity. I am authentic the way I am. And of course, authenticity is a value that is not constructed in a monological process, as Correia states. It's rather an encounter with another. So we are always building authenticity together with the others. And what happens when we go online? We have this new kind of dimension of visuality that gains another layer of what could be considered authentic or not. And our argument, together with Dufay and Hunt, is that the female body is always subject to constant scrutiny and evaluation. So it kind of, in a way, doesn't matter if the body is trying to be body positive or having a great influence from the body positive movement, or if it tries to fit some standards. Either way, we are subject to constant scrutiny and evaluation. And then we dive into this idea of the gendered ruptures of performance that we're trying to propose in this article. I'm just checking my time here. Okay. And then the idea is we selected two cases among many others that we had in our hands. So we selected two cases of two Brazilian female digital influencers that had millions, actually they have millions of followers on social network sites. And we chose for the first case here, the one of Bianca Andrade, who is also called Bianca Rosa, as she calls herself nowadays, who is a beauty influencer. And she's a person that we could say she's trying to fit the standards of what we call a desirable body in Brazilian society. And she was one of the first digital influencers in Brazil. And she has this very specific place of being between the ordinary, because she was born and raised in a favela here in Rio de Janeiro, and at the same time occupying the space of being of the extraordinary, because she is a millionaire, she has a perfect life. So she is between the ordinary and the extraordinary. She's a very well-known influencer in Brazilian scenario. And she gained thousands of new followers when she claimed she had lost over 12 kilos due to physical exercise and dietary education back in 2017. So she was selling this idea that we could be fit and we could lose weight if we had the will to do that, and if we followed some principles of exercises and diets. So this is her. This is Bianca Andrade, still back in 2017. And in this post, for example, she's very much following this neoliberal idea that we can build our bodies the way we want. So, and she's saying nothing can stop us. I came from the favela, I had nothing, and now look at where I am now. So it's a very meritocratic discourse. And then on December the 7th, 2017, she ended up revealing during the break of a radio show interview that was being transmitted live via Facebook. She ended up revealing that she had undergone liposuction surgery on her abdomen. And then she had an immediate rain of accusations saying that she was lying to her fan base, that she was cheating them because she had never mentioned to her public anything about the surgery before. We can see here on the left on the screen that this is the moment where she says that she had the surgery and she did not know. She was being recorded and she was being transmitted live. This was during the break. She was with her mother, and then she lost millions of followers and became the topic of several on and offline media channels that are focused especially on soft news. So what we see is that she ended up revealing an aspect of her life that was supposed to stay backstage, as Goffman would put it. And she was perceived as not real or not transparent enough, as Dufay and Hunt would say. So her body was no longer seen as naturally healthy or not naturally beautiful, and therefore she lost the value of authenticity she was trying to build. And then she had to change and reprogram all her way of self-branding or self-presenting herself. She gave no more fitness tips, and she started focusing only on makeup tips so that she wouldn't lose all her base of followers. Then we can, if we have time, we can speak a little bit of what's going on with her nowadays in her life. So she really changed her performance. The second case is that of Leticia Muniz. She's a body positive model. Here we can see her profile on Instagram. She has almost 1 million followers. She said that self-love is the new sexy. That's what's written here in Portuguese. And she's a person that we could say she could help us break imposing values regarding women's bodies. She is trying to inscribe alternative modes of description in the world. So she's defending her body the way it is, not trying to fit any standard of thinness or fitness here in our context. But at the same time she does that, she reinforces the imperative of happiness. She reinforces values of success and the association of Brazilian women with beauty and sexiness. So we have to be beauty and sexy all the time, even though our bodies are not the standard ones. So this is her. This is a very recent post in which she says, I saw some skinny women looking at me and laughing at me. Are you bothered? This is what I am here for. I'm here to bother you. So I'm curvy, that's what I am. And many people here are saying that they approve this. So they are saying, yes, you are hot, you are beautiful the way you are. But then what happened? In 2019, a Brazilian journalist and plus size activist called Giovanna Baria gave an interview to a radio station accusing Leticia of appropriating the plus size agenda. She said, and I quote, she has a flat belly. She does not suffer any kind of prejudice, and she does not have a problem with accessibility to clothes, medical exams, or anything of the like. in our Brazilian context. Her argument, that of Giovanna, is that brands were propagating a false discourse, an image of fat women, and Leticia was corroborating that and excluding the real fat ones. So she had a sort of passing privilege, as Bacon and other authors would say, in regards to being fat in Brazilian society. And then Leticia, she also changed her performance. Nowadays, she does not call herself a plus-size model anymore, and she refers to her body as big rather than fat. So what we can see is that neither Bianca nor Leticia are seen as authentic enough. They were both part of this, they had their performances ruptured, broken. And this idea of rupture performance is an idea that we have some intentionalities in our self-performances. And the rupture is when they do not occur as we expected as social actors. So this is what myself and Fernanda Carreira, we have been arguing on in other works as well. So this is usually an involuntary gesture. It's a movement that we do not expect to happen. And when it happens in digital media, we have digital traces, and they tend to reach wide audiences and attain high visibility, especially for those who have lots of followers, which is the case, of course, of both Leticia and Bianca, because they are influencers now. So what we see is that female influencers, and this is also an argument that is also present in literature nowadays, they have their online activities routinely structured in anticipation of critical feedback and policing all the time, as Dufy and Hunt would say. So we have our bodies scrutinized all the time, and this gains another level of scrutiny and of visibility in social media. So then we argue female bodies are more susceptible to having our performances criticized, questioned, and ruptured for being perceived as non-authentic. Doesn't matter if we're trying, it's not that it doesn't matter, but the complicated issue is that even when we try to escape some standards, we are still criticized for not being true enough, for not being authentic enough. And then I promise I'm going to, I'm in my final remarks already. And then we see that the performance ruptures, they are contextually localized, especially when we're thinking about identity and body categories. So these are two cases that make sense in Brazilian society in terms of the intersectionality between gender, weight, and race. And of course, social class as well. And of course, we have to look at these aspects of identity from intersectional perspectives. So this is a complex mix of different identity avenues that we have crossed in these bodies. And also another thing that we observe is that we also have to look at non-human agents in these processes of ruptures of performance. We have online platforms, we have cameras, we have all algorithms, we have a plethora of agents that are non-human, that are mediating and are also affecting directly our own performances. So we could talk a little bit more further on this subject, but this is the case of not knowing that an interview was being broadcast live on social media, for example, as what happened to Bianca. And we have also this complex mediatic scenario where we have a different media coping with or organizing or interfering in our own performances. And what we claim is that a new perspective on self-presentation studies, one that looks at the problems that we have in performative practice online, is needed in order for us to understand how much is demanded from our feminine bodies. So, and this is just, of course, we're talking about gender here in a very binary way. So we're focusing on women as a category. We could expand that and we could have more complex discussions regarding that. So what we claim is looking at ruptures in performance could help us understand how much is demanded from our bodies. This would be an argument that we defend in the paper. And then just, I would like to conclude with some words from Conceição Evaristo, who is a poet, Brazilian poet. And this poem is called I'll say it in Portuguese, okay? And then we can translate if we could, but I'll say it in Portuguese because it loses a lot when we translate that. So I'll say it in Portuguese. Uma gota de leite me escorre entre os seios, uma mancha de sangue me enfeita entre as pernas. Meia palavra mordida me foge da boca. Vagos desejos insinuam esperanças. Eu, mulher, em rios vermelhos, inauguro a vida. Em baixa voz, violentos tímpanos do mundo. Antevejo, antecipo, antes vivo. Antes agora o que há de vir. Eu, fêmea matriz, eu, força motriz, eu, mulher, abrigo da semente, moto contínuo do mundo. So I thank all of you for hearing what we have to say. I thank all of you for being here, and I hope we can have a very productive discussion. And thank you. Obrigada. Gracias. Dankeschön. And I hope we're going to see brighter days in the future with Lula. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bia, for this amazing presentation. I do have some questions and comments, but I would like to open to the public to see if anyone has anything to say, a question. So this is a time and space that we can open a debate. Yes, Fatima.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a sec, my cam. Yeah, hi, thank you, Beatriz, for this wonderful presentation and, raising out many important points there, which are pertinent not just to Brazil, but also to India or any other country in the world. So I want to point out to two concepts here, two aspects which we can conceptualize. One is this idea of happiness on social media. Whether you go to Instagram or Reels or YouTube, anywhere for that matter. And the second thing is all the pages, the fitness pages, we can say, where all these influencers or even the ones who are not so famous, they are trying to exercise and trying to propagate a culture, where they already have fit bodies. It's like sometimes you want to ask the question that, okay, why do they need to even exercise in the first place? But the motive there is not just fitness or, general wellness, but to propagate a kind of culture where you associate women's happiness, we can conceptualize happiness with this idea of being fit and being active. Yeah, so I wanted to add that to it because no matter which page you go to, there is always this romanticization of